Formula One philosophy is back from an undisclosed location. Not a basement, not a man cave, but an undisclosed location where Sean and I are going to hit you with some facts, truths, and logic about the Monza Grand Prix, the Italian Grand Prix as it's known, the Italian, about the 2025...
Because, that one that they do in Imola isn't the Italian Grand Prix at all.
Because it's San Marino. Is that Italy, Sean?
It is. San Marino is an autonomous state in Italy, which is nowhere near Imola.
Yeah, because Imola's in Emilia-Romagna.
Right.
So this Grand Prix has never...
very much Italy.
So this Grand Prix has never made sense, then, in all of its history.
This one has.
The Italian Grand Prix.
It was the first Italian Grand Prix.
Yeah, in 1950, so it's one of the oldest ones, right?
It is the oldest, yes.
And they were, I don't know if you saw in your, I'm sure Formula1.com showed the, what do you call it? The old bank, the curve, what used to be the old Curva Grande.
Which isn't actually the original one. That's the redone one that was in the 60s or 70s, I think.
In typical Italian...
The original one is back in the forest somewhere and you can't see it from the track.
So in typical Italian fashion, the stuff that made it famous has nothing to do with anything. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. All right. So before we get on to our Monza recap, Sean and I want to pay homage to something that happens every year that we remember. It's a big deal in our lives, and we need to talk about it, Sean. On Thursday, September the 11th, it was my last karting race. Oh, a day that will live in infamy. I'm taking the year off because the baby's coming and I have some other projects I'm going to be doing throughout the next year, so I'm going to have to take a year off. And I won't be able to kart anymore in the house league karting that I do at Goodwood Kartways. That refuses to sponsor us, by the way. I've reached out many times. Their loss, clearly. But it was my last karting race. It's a day I'll never forget, Sean. 9/11/2025. Nobody ever has a bad memory of 9/11. But I do. I took pole, Sean, for my last race. Blew the start like Lando Norris. Was third by the end of the lap. Made it back to second. Finished less than a second behind first. But the fact that I blew my last race is eating me alive. And I will never forget September 11th for that reason. September 11th, 2025. Okay. Let's talk about the Monza Grand Prix. The Italian Grand Prix. A race that was looking like it was going to be pretty boring. But as usual, as what is commonplace in Formula 1 2025, a bunch of bullshit happened towards the end of the race that made it all worthwhile and worth talking about. Pretty standard race. In the meantime, Max Verstappen takes a record pole position from Lando Norris, who also set a record. Poor guy can't catch a break. And dominates a race, even after losing the lead early on, and wins it by 20 seconds. Leading people to obviously overreact and saying Red Bull's back, Red Bull's now a threat, without thinking about anything that they've talked about for the previous 9 months. But still, it was a pretty impressive race. A lot of drama towards the end, I think we'll talk about in the second half. Ferrari not on the podium, disappointing their fans once again, 4th and 5th. And a litany of other drivers. Alex Albon, Bortoleto, Hadjar, Antonelli, Russell, closing out the top 10. As usual, we do a two-part here, and we'll do the good and the bad. Do you want to give any general comments about the Grand Prix before we get into our good and bad?
I think the only general comment I have is that I had higher hopes for it. It wasn't as boring as it could have been, but it definitely lacked a little something.
Yeah, there was, it probably could have used some rain, could have used some, like a safety car or something like that, just to switch things up on people to make it more
Even
interesting. But
even just a bold move here or there. Right? We had a couple of moves, but nothing was really ever on.
I think we'll talk about that more in the bad, because I think I know both moves that you're talking about.
Okay. So
What were your goods this week?
I'm gonna put Max up there in the good, and probably an Alex Albin.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have as good a weekend as people wanted per se, or people had hoped for. But everybody has selective memory, I feel. They go, oh, the Williams always goes good at Monza. Well, the Williams always went well at Monza because it went shit everywhere else. They spent the last 2 years or year and a half, year and 2/3, whatever we're at, fixing the car so that it was competitive elsewhere. So I don't know why people thought this would be an amazing track for them. That being said, they showed some promise in practice that just didn't seem to be there. But Alex at least was able to stick it out during the race and get a couple of points. So I'm going to put him up there. And then Max, I think it's pretty straightforward. He got out there and he did what he did, put it on pole. No one really expected that. And came back in the race and showed us what he can do, even when he listens to the rules and gives the position back.
Yeah, it turns out that wasn't what was stopping Norris in the past. It was, that was always his main complaint. I don't know if you heard a lot of what was being talked about with the engineers, with Pierre Wache for Red Bull, for even Laurent Macchis, what they were saying all weekend and after the race. That Max basically told them, we're doing this. We're doing a particular type of setup. We're going with a very thin wing, low downforce, I guess would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what I can do at this track with this car. I know what I can do with the car. Just give me this, and I'll give you everything you need. And for a year where, you and I compare him, we say he's a perfect mix of Senna and Schumacher, right? Like he's very relentless like Senna, very, very emotional at times, very strong-willed, can put a shitty car in a good position. And he's also like Michael in the sense that he can build a car over years with good engineers. But I think this race we saw where him be more Michael, right? Where he said, "I don't care how bad the car is, just give me what I need, and I'll get it there." And that's very interesting, and I think that's good for a year where he's been more like Senna, where he's been like lost on the engineers, just up and down, erratic at times, and very like throw his hands in the air and give up. I think like you can say that was like Senna in '93. At times when he was just like fed up at McLaren and he was kind of like, this is it. Like, this is all I can do. Max has been like that, I would say, the first half of this year. But if he reached this level and continues this the rest of the year and is like Michael, he could be very lethal. And they're coming up on another low downforce track in Baku. And I don't think they win it. But they're in the discussion, which is amazing considering where they were last year.
Yeah. And they've always done well at Baku, but it is a very different low downforce track to Monza because it's really not a low downforce track. They tend to run thinner wings in Baku because of the long straights, but you do need the downforce because there's a shit ton of slow corners. So I think you're right. I think they're going to struggle next weekend. And they needed this win to help cushion that blow, basically.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know about a struggle because, like I said, there is still Max's car. Yeah, maybe Yuki would struggle. Maybe Liam would have a hard time or anyone else right now. But like this is now Max seems like he's going to just find solutions. And this is kind of what he said afterwards, too. He said the old engineers just were kind of deer in the headlights. They were frozen. They didn't know what to do. And he feels like he's giving Mekis credit that may not be really because of Mekis, or it may be. But he's basically saying we now have guidance. We now have an idea of what to do when we come into every weekend, which could be lethal. Next week in Baku could be beneficial in Singapore. They suddenly don't seem like a lame duck in Singapore, which I know is not really a low downforce track. It's a very interesting setup.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's interesting now. I think it's they're in a good spot. They're not hopeless. And it's exciting to hear.
Yeah, and
Go on.
it's interesting what you said about his comments. They have direction now. With Mekis in there, it may be that what we were hearing about Christian Horner was true, right? That he wanted to control everything. He had everybody kind of in his palm, and he was, the supreme leader of that team, basically, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the change that was needed. You needed someone to come in and say, hey, listen, we're going to actually do this a different way now. If that's what it is, then great. I hope it sticks around. And maybe that is, to your point, where next weekend may not be such a shit show for them if they keep that up.
I surmise that Mekis came into the team after Hungary. I know you listened to my solo recap, and I said he kind of seems like a puppet. He kind of seems like someone who's just a lame duck for a while that they're going to blame everything on while they're in transition. But it seems like he's embracing that a little bit, because based on the sounds of the interviews, he came in with the attitude, like you're saying, he's not supreme leader, but also like, I don't know how to fix this. Does anybody have any ideas? Does anybody want to speak up? Which, like we've been saying for for years now under Horner, it's you're not allowed to speak up. There's one way to do this. So that is a beneficial part of Mekis, is I think he's embracing the role that I'm not going to dictate the way forward here. I don't have the answers just yet. I need all of you. And it seems to be helping whatever brain is still at Red Bull.
Right.
I'm also going to put, are we done with Max and Red Bull?
I think so.
I'm going to put Bortoleto in the good.
Mm-hmm.
He's just really sort of taken over Sauber in the last 4 races. There's not much to say. Like, he's not doing these, he's not getting a podium like Hulkenberg. He's not getting a top 5. But he is the one who's more likely to be in Q3 now. Hulkenberg has not hit Q3 this year. But Bortoleto has, I think, 3 or 4 times. And he seems to be their only hope now every weekend. And he's really embracing that role. Like, it seems like Hulkenberg did a lot of the dirty work at the beginning, but now Bortoleto's free to roam. And it's a really interesting dynamic they have there at Sauber. They both have both drivers pulling their own weight at times. And he's definitely not a lame duck F2 winner. We have to remember he went back to back, like Oscar Piastri. There's something there. And I just don't think he's getting enough love this year.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. He's not getting the love because he's in a Sauber and they're not doing anything. And I think this goes to what we spoke about a couple weeks ago, in our Cadillac discussion, where Cadillac went and sourced 2 high-end drivers because they want people with experience. Because when you're new to the sport, you're building your first car. If you have a rookie who doesn't know what a good car feels like, they're not going to do anything for you. They're not going to be able to develop anything. And I think this is what we might be seeing with Sauber and Hulkenberg and Bortoleto, where the car was not good at the beginning. They're one of the teams that is actually developing their car this year. And I have a feeling that Hulkenberg, having driven so many different F1 cars over his career, has been part of that development to say, okay, this is where the car needs to go. And now that the car is somewhat reasonable, we're getting to see Bortoleto do his thing. And I think that's where we're going to see who he really is start to come out in the next few races.
Alonso thinks he's the rookie of the generation.
You know,
So
Alonso thinks a lot of things. Most of them are not true.
I know. I think that's hyperbole because he's his manager, but it's
Yeah.
I'm just glad I didn't write this kid off preseason. Neither did you, and you got to give yourself a pat on the back there.
I was not enthusiastic, but I was willing to give him a try.
Yeah, you brought about skepticism because you'd seen so many drivers who have been essentially allowed to run free by a team like McLaren said, just you can go, do whatever you need to do. We don't think much about you. And you've seen that fail many times. I think this is an instance that McLaren might just have a lot of good young drivers and they don't know what to do with all of them. So they got rid of this one that they didn't think much of.
Yeah, and I think that really is part of the problem. A lot of these young driver academies, they're all worried about missing out on the next Max Verstappen. So they snatch up everybody that they can with no realistic opportunity for any of these kids to go anywhere, right? The rule in F2 is that the champion cannot come back. So if you've got what you think are true talents who are going to win F3, F2, but you don't have a race seat to put them in, what the fuck are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Have them sit on the sidelines for 3 years like Felipe Drugovich?
Or wallow in F2.
Kind of a
wallow in F2 like Richard Verschoor and who else am I thinking
well,
of?
no, but you missed my point.
No,
If you've got all these great talents who you think are going to be champions and they are champions, they can't go back to F2, right?
I understand.
So if you've got Lando and Oscar and you've got two guys in F2 that you're really vying for and they're at the top of the leaderboard, you've effectively ruined their careers because now they're stuck unless you let them go, right? So that's the part about the driver academy that kind of bothers me is everybody's gotten a bit greedy and it kind of shoehorns or doesn't shoehorn it stunts some of the possibility of these guys who think they're going to be the next big thing in F1 with McLaren, but then they don't have a race seat for them, so they end up in WEC or in Formula E or somewhere less than Formula One and never actually get a chance to come back. So it's good that Bortoleto got that opportunity and was effectively dropped by McLaren and allowed to do this.
So you're saying McLaren wasn't greedy, in a sense.
Sorry?
So you're trying to say McLaren seems to be the only team that isn't that greedy, or if they are greedy, they know when to let them go. If you want to let them fly, let them fly. If you
personally, I think they didn't rate Bortoleto that highly. I think they thought he was not going to be much, but that's my opinion based on absolutely nothing.
I don't understand why nobody seems to value the F2 champion anymore. It's very weird. Like what's the point of these feeder series then? Just so you can like put the ones that you rate highly that aren't necessarily like look at Antonelli. Like he could have used he could have used some motivating championships in the lower series. But instead it seems like it was just used as like a bullpen for a year, which is the complete opposite of what it was meant to be. And
and that's absolutely right. Like look at all the older guys, right? And they always talk about, oh, he was GP2 champion or he was, F3 champion here. And, they always talk about the junior careers, right? Especially Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg was amazing in his junior career. Didn't do much in F1. Okay, fine. But whenever you have a good driver, they always go back and look at the junior careers. You won't be able to do that with Antonelli.
No.
He wasn't an F3 champion because he didn't do F3. He wasn't the F2 champion because Toto wanted him too quickly. He has actually very little credit to his name as far as championships, right? He's a FRECA champion, but that means ick all, really.
Yeah, I heard a name. I was reading some of the comments. Apparently someone just repeated what he did. I forget the name, but like they were making a big deal of Antonelli going to like the Saudi Arabian F4 or European F4 and winning them all at the same time. Someone I don't know the name, and maybe if someone in the comments can give the name to us at F1 Philosophy at YouTube or F1philosophypod@gmail.com and remind us who someone just, I think it was an Englishman, just repeated exactly what Antonelli did and won every series in F4, but is not going anywhere. He's not doing anything with that. He's probably just going to have to enter F3 with his own money if he even has it. So
and
go on.
if you're a reasonable driver, that's not that difficult of a feat to do. It's a shit ton of travel, it's a shit ton of work. But realistically, if you can afford to do it, it's not that difficult. Because all these championships, all this moving around between different regionals, it breaks up the season, right? So a lot of times you'll see F4 careers are kind of patchy, where they do partial seasons here, partial seasons there. And it's because a lot of these things overlap. So if you've got somebody like Toto and Mercedes behind you who's willing to pay for all that, it's really not that difficult to do, as long as you're actually a halfway decent driver that can win. So I'm not surprised that it happened.
It's almost like Mercedes gaslit themselves into thinking Antonelli was all that. Made a big deal about things that weren't really a big deal. But this is not the bad.
No.
Yeah. So sorry for us getting off topic. It was a good discussion, but let's get back onto the rails. Do you have another good after Bortoleto or Albon?
No, not particularly.
Okay, so before we end this episode, then I got one more. Hadjar. I'm gonna put him in my good. If any regular listener knows I do not value 10th place. To me, it's a garbage point that should disappear. 10th and 9th. I think there should be points to 8th, and that's being generous. Nick points end at 6th. But there's something to be said about somebody who, after an excellent podium in Zandvoort, had a tough qualifying, was a little demoralized after Saturday, could have just thrown this weekend in the garbage as a normal rookie would do, could have just not cared, could have just screamed at his team and the whole weekend, say, we don't have it, this is not our weekend. But instead, just did a solid race from the pit lane, worked his way up, some good strategy, but also some great pace, and snuck a 10th. We have now seen every rendition of Hadjar. We've seen him do solid races. We've seen him do decent races like 8th to 10th. We've seen him to do the podium, right? We saw the 6th in Monaco. And now we see this. We've seen him develop every muscle in his body, so to speak, or every muscle in his mind about how to be a good driver in the future. I think this is solid. There was no help from safety cars. There was no help from anything. There was just him being solid. And I want to give him some kudos, some props. He could have thrown this whole weekend away, and he didn't. And I'm impressed. I'm starting to really go all in with this kid. Compare that last week to Behrman, who nobody's talking about that 6th place because it was kind of pathetic, even though he started from the pit lane. He was helped by 3 safety cars, was essentially abandoned by his team because they pitted Ocon first to get Ocon's pit stop out of the way because they felt he was the one that could get into the points more likely. And Behrman was helped by a safety car right at the perfect time so he could pit, and only passed Pierre Gasly on 46 lap old tires, the Alpine, for 7th, and then got 6th from Antonelli's penalty. Yes, you have to be there, but it was just so, I don't know, like it was just seemed like it was so pathetic in comparison to Hadjar, who came 10th. Am I just reading something that's not there, or do you see the same thing I see?
I'm not going to comment on the Behrman thing because I don't necessarily agree with it. I didn't bring up Hadjar simply because it was such a drastic drop from last week, or from Zandvoort. But you are right. He went out there and did not have a good weekend from the start. I'm pretty sure all weekend their car did not perform well, which wasn't necessarily a surprise. Their car performed so well at Zandvoort and so well at a couple other tracks that you wouldn't expect it to perform well here just from the nature of it. So I wasn't necessarily surprised that they were struggling. But like you said, to go out and have such a shitty qualifying and decide to start from the pit lane and then come back and just stick it out because they did run a long strategy just like everybody else did. And this is what we've come to know from Hajar this year, right? He can get out there and do the work. He doesn't complain. We don't hear him yelling on the radio anymore. He claims that he still is, but we don't get it in our transmissions. And what it comes off as is a really professional, high quality drive from the guy that we all thought at the beginning of the year was going to go nowhere because he ended up in the wall before the race started in Australia. So I'm with you. It was definitely a good race for him. And I really do hope that we hear more about Hajar in the coming years. Just as long as it's not with Red Bull.
He may not have a choice in that matter, but we'll see.
I would love to see him go elsewhere, if I'm honest.
There is a second seat open at Alpine.
That's also a bad idea.
Maybe, maybe not. I really have nothing else to follow up with that because you're right. It actually, on the surface, sounds terrible. But I'm thinking Frenchman, all Frenchman lineup again. A little smarter than Ocon this time. What else they got to lose?
Maybe our viewers are more intelligent than I am. I don't recall an all French lineup that has ever worked.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm sure someone's going to give me an obscure reference to in 1957, but realistically, in modern F1, I do not recall an all French iteration that has ever worked.
Is there a French partner of Prost's? I don't think so, right?
What do you mean?
When Alain Prost was doing well, was there ever a partner of his that was French? I don't think so, right? It was Lauda and then Senna. Yeah, I don't think there was a... No.
No. Because he never raced with a Lacey.
Did Prost? I don't think so, no. Oh, actually, he might have in his last year at Ferrari. Still, didn't work.
Anyway.
All right, I think that wraps up the good. We'll be right back with the bad.